Hello and welcome back. In this video, we are going to study about the Charter of 1753. This is module 1.1.2 of semester 3 of the second year BA LLB course. Let us understand why there was a need to introduce Charter of 1753. The charter was issued to remove the defects in the mayor's courts which was established under the Charter of 1726. In the previous video, I have explained in detail about the mayor's courts of 1726. There were many problems in the mayor's court of 1726, which was established through the Charter of 1726. There was a lot of executive interference from the governor and council in the functioning of the mayor's courts. The mayor courts didn't have trained judges. There was an appellate system introduced, but there's a lot of confusion because there was conflict of jurisdiction. Also, due to administrative inefficiency, a lot of corruption charges were made against the governor and the mayor's courts. Now, to resolve these issues, the British Crown issued the Charter of 1753. This was introduced to bring in judicial reforms in the presidency towns of the Madras, Bombay and Calcutta, and also to make the courts independent. First, let us understand why there was a need of the Charter of 1753. Executive interference, as we discussed earlier, the governors often overruled the judicial decisions given by the mayor's court. The aldermen were untrained. Most of them were either merchants or traders, and they had no legal knowledge. There was also accusations of bias and corruption. Mostly these aldermen would favor their own countrymen and Britishers. The appeal system was also very confusing. The structure, although was there, but the process was not uniform through all the three presidencies. Although there was a separation of powers, that is, the mayor court had the civil jurisdiction and very minimal of criminal jurisdiction because that was with the governor and council. Yet, the governor and council was the appellate authority. All appeals from the mayor's court would go to the governor and council, and then therefore they would interfere in the judicial decisions of the mayor's court. So there was this conflict between the governor and council and the mayor's court, because governor and council had the executive as well as judicial roles. Also, there was more need for British control over the functioning of these courts in India. Bengal and Bombay had seen a lot of growth in trade as well as in population in the presidency towns. This led to increased litigation. Therefore, there was this need for a reform in the 1726 Charter. Now, what are the key changes introduced in this Charter vis-a-vis the 1726 Charter? So, first of all, the mayor's court was reconstituted. The court retained the same structure, that is 1 mayor and 9 aldermen, but now the aldermen needed approval from the crown, that is from England. Now the aim of this change was that to bring in loyalty and competent members in the mayor's court. English subjects were preferred restricting non-English influence. That is, they didn't want Indians to interfere in the functioning of the mayor's court. So this was the major changes brought in. The purpose was to reduce corruption which was leveled against the company and the court. Increased British control over the judicial personnel. The governor and councils were given more defined appellate powers. Now, in the earlier system, appeals to the governor and council were irregular. That is, some appeals would go, some appeals wouldn't go. Now, the changes introduced in the 1753 Charter defined very clear rules for how the appeals would be filed. The official appellate authority now was the governor and council. Appeals were limited to cases involving higher values or important legal issues. So this was a very important change. Appeal limited to cases involving higher values only. Now this resulted in a very clear appellate structure. Governor's authority increased, and litigants could now know what was the process, predictable process of the judgment or of the court process. A court of request was created in Calcutta. This was a significant development, as this was the first time small causes court was introduced. This court of request, it dealt with small petty civil cases, basically small value disputes, and therefore the governor and council would be rid of the overburdening of litigations coming from the mayor's court through appeal. Now there was a separate court, the court of request, which would handle these small matters. The justice was quick and inexpensive. It held the Indian residents, and it was presided over by commissioners, not aldermen. Earlier in 1726, the court was functioning under the aldermen and a mayor. What was the significance of this court of request? First time, small causes court was introduced in India. Even today we have small causes courts. And this reduced the burden on mayor's court, which would now handle a higher valued litigations. There were some adjustments in criminal jurisdiction also. The charter attempted to bring clarity in the criminal matters. What were the changes? There was another court called quarter sessions, which handled all criminal jurisdictions, which we learnt in the earlier video. And aldermen would assist in minor offences, whereas serious criminal matters went to the governor and council. So in the earlier 1726 charter also, the governor and council used to handle all criminal cases. Now it was more defined as to minor offences of crime would be handled by the aldermen, and serious natured or serious criminal cases would be handled by the governor and council. And separate quarter sessions was introduced. This impacted in a clear division of judicial responsibility. Mayor's court could no longer interfere with the criminal jurisdiction. So 1753 made it very clear, mayor court cannot interfere in the criminal matters. The rich local merchants who used to influence the court systems and the governor and council, because they were the aldermen in that, this charter tried to reduce that influence. Now these aldermen would now be appointed by the crown, and there was a preference for Englishmen. Earlier there were different, there were Armenians, Portuguese, Indians in the group of aldermen, over 9 aldermen. Now, most preference was given to the Englishmen or the Britishers. And also the Crown was looking for certain qualifications for the post in judiciary. This was to prevent local lobbying and also to ensure British domination in the judicial decisions. Earlier we saw in 1726 that the mayor court was also given a status of corporation. That is, they could handle municipal duties in all the three presidencies of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. So their functions were enhanced here. It's the same thing as in 1726. They could collect local taxes and municipal regulations they could introduce. Urban governance was there. They could manage the presidency towns. Thus, civic administration became more organized. So what was the significance finally? We'll recap. It strengthened the mayor's courts, reduced corruption and local influence, more structured appellate system, introduced small causes justice, that is the court of requests, which would handle petty offences, matters of petty cases, increased crown supervision, improved judicial independence, laid foundation for later reforms like the Regulating Act of 1773, which we will cover in the next video, and Supreme Court's establishment of Supreme Court in 1774. Thus, the Charter of 1753 was a reformative step to correct the weaknesses of the judicial system established by the Charter of 1726. Although there was not major fundamental change, it refined the existing courts by enhancing the efficiency, reducing biases, and getting more British governmental control. Let us look at few short questions. What was the purpose of Charter of 1753? It was to correct the judicial system defects created by the Charter of 1726 and to reorganize the mayor's courts. What major new court was introduced? The Court of Request, which was also known as a Small Causes Court. Who became the appellate authority under the Charter of 1753? Earlier also it was Governor and Council. Even in 1753, the appellate authority was Governor and Council of the respective presidencies. What remained unchanged in criminal jurisdiction? Criminal jurisdiction continued with the Court of Quarter Sessions. So earlier also there was a Court of Quarter Sessions which handled the criminal matters or criminal issues. However, aldermen appointed under the Charter of 1753, this was with the Crown's approval. Earlier, they used to be elected by the company, and these were rich individuals, either from different, from Indians, Armenians and so on, Portuguese. Now, more preference was given to Britishers, and this was with the approval of the Crown, so that there would be more British control on the court system. Explain the major changes introduced by the Charter of 1753. Here we have to write about how the constitution of the mayor's court was, that is 1 mayor and 9 aldermen and so on. How the appeal system was. What was the court of request, that is the small causes court. Restrictions on locals and in getting appointed as aldermen, and the control of the Crown. Discuss the reasons behind the reforms introduced by the Charter of 1753. The main reforms, the problems because of which this Charter of 1753 was introduced was the problems that was faced in the mayor's court of the Charter of 1726, because it lacked judges lacked legal training, they didn't have legal knowledge, there was a lot of executive interference from the governor and council, there were charges of corruption also. So this was the reason for the introduction of Charter of 1753. Evaluate the significance of Charter of 1753 in the development of the Indian legal system. Here we have to talk about intermediate stage between the Mayor's Court and the Supreme Courts. So let us look at the mind map first. Charter of 1753. The reform of Mayor's Court, that was the main purpose, to reform the Mayor's Court. Aldermen were appointed via the approval by the Crown. There were more Englishmen in the group in the court system. The appellate changes introduced was that basically there was clear appeal system. Governor and Council was the appellate authority. A court of request was established, which was also known as the Small Causes Court in Calcutta. It was introduced to provide quick and cheap justice to the local inhabitants as well as to the merchants and traders of the presidency. Criminal jurisdiction was handled by the Court of Quarter Sessions. This was retained from the earlier 1726 charter. The aldermen were limited in the sense that only the Crown approved people would be appointed as aldermen, and also they would have to have certain legal education. Basically, 1753 charter was introduced to reduce corruption, making the courts stronger, having more British control, and this led to the foundation for the establishment of Supreme Court in 1774. So Charter of 1753 was introduced to reform the defect in Charter of 1726. Mayor courts was reorganized. Aldermen were now appointed with the approval of the Crown. Appellate structure was clarified. The appeal would now go to Governor and Council. Earlier also it used to go to Governor and Council. Court of request was introduced. These are the Small Causes Court in Calcutta for petty civil cases. Criminal jurisdiction remained with the Quarter Sessions. Reduced Court of Quarter Sessions, that is, and local influence was reduced. British legal control was increased. This was a step towards the later judicial reforms of 1774, in which the Supreme Court was established. Thank you very much for listening through. If this video helped you, consider sharing with your friends and do subscribe. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.